So hopefully you've watched the welcome video and know who I am, but if not, I'm David Elliott. I am the other course organizer other than Alex. And so I'm going to walk through some of the information about this course, when we're going to be doing stuff, what it might look like, and some of the policies and stuff that the university and the course has. All this information is up on the website if you would rather read it, so you don't need to watch this video if you've already read all the information on the website, but you may prefer to just go through this in video form. Maybe I'll expand upon a few points and answer any questions you might already have that way. Obviously, feel free to keep use of any other way of communicating us if anything is unclear about this course. But without further ado, let's get going. Let's start by having a look at the structure of the course and some of the components that make up this course. So each week we're going to be getting different things that happen each day. So on Mondays we're going to be releasing the lecture videos for that week. On Tuesdays and Wednesdays are going to be when the student hours are with myself or Alex, and we'll determine a time later based on when works for you guys. Thursdays are going to be the code along sessions on Zoom. On Friday are going to be the workshops, which are mostly going to be in person, but for some of you, they're going to be on Zoom as well. And for Sunday, it's going to be the weekly quiz hand-in time as well. Let's kind of go in and have a look at some of those components each step by step. So the lecture videos are going to be released on Mondays, and they're going to start with a state of the IDS video, which is going to kind of go over what we learned last week, what we're focusing on this week, any common issues, anything that we feel needs to be addressed for the week to make sure you can move into it with clarity and any issues addressed that were common, and maybe talk about some deadlines, that sort of thing. So we're going to start with that. And then the rest of the videos are mostly going to be taught by Mina, who's a world expert in R and data science, and she was the course organizer last year. She's been developing these materials for years now, and so we felt watching the videos that they were still very relevant for this year. We couldn't really arrange synchronous lectures this year, and we felt that these videos were still really high quality and that redoing them this year was not fully needed. But me and Alex will go in, like we've been doing, and update anything that we feel needs to be updated for this year too, without adding any extra work to you. We wouldn't want to be adding more work this year than was in the course last year, for example. So we're going to be keeping an eye on making sure everything's kept fresh, but also using the quality content that was developed for last year too. So we want you to watch these videos and learn from them by the workshops on the Friday. And that's imagining if we were doing this lectures in person, as if you had to attend the lecture. We would expect that the materials that we go on Friday for the workshops, that you've already learned the material for the week. So that is the expectation. We do also have these application exercises sprinkled in to kind of keep, instead of just watching lots of lectures, you have these exercise examples where you're able to put the theory into practice and to get some hands-on. And you've already seen one of those because that was the last video. And so this keeps it a little bit more active than just watching a series of lectures. So we hope you enjoy those too, and please do them. They're really going to help you along when it comes to some of the more assessed parts of the course. So starting from week 2, we're going to be doing student hours. One we plan on doing in person, and the other one we're planning on doing on Zoom. And we're not going to record these. And the reason that we're not going to record these is we want them to be a session where people can come in and ask questions to me or Alex in a way that's a little bit more informal. It's maybe more of a conversational style, and it's just an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you want some simultaneous, like synchronous feedback. So straight away getting a response, and we can just have a conversation about it. And it might be that there's a few people in the room, it might be just us. It really depends on how many people turn up and how we decide to run those sessions. But they're a little bit more freeform, and they're a really good chance to get answers to any problems that you have straight away, or just come in and say hi and hang out. Our code along sessions are going to be on Thursdays between 10 a.m. and 11:10. Not really sure where that extra 10 minutes came from, but it'll finish around 11. It must be something quirk to do with the timetabling. So these are going to be on Zoom, and these are going to be recorded. And what these are is they're an opportunity for you to engage and watch and join in with a live coding session. So either Alex or myself are going to have a problem that kind of relates to the topics that we're learning about during the week. And it's an opportunity for you to watch us tackle these problems, watch as we struggle with warnings and errors, just as you will, and watch how, even after the years that we've been coding, how we still go and find solutions, read warnings, locate where we've made tiny errors, maybe use Google or Stack Overflow, and also shout out to you guys and see what suggestions you have about what we should be doing, or if you can identify any of the errors in our codes and stuff like that. One of us will be doing the coding, the other one, either myself or Alex, will be moderating the chat, where we'll be asking questions and you can respond to them. You can be coding at the same time as us, or you can just be watching us coding. But it's a fun opportunity for everyone to engage and have this kind of community. All of us get together for a live session of just coding and kind of working on some problems together. So hopefully you'll come. It's also another opportunity to ask questions, because some of the stuff that we'll be doing is related to the week. It might be that a problem is raised that you had during some of the other parts of the course, and so you want to be like, hey, I didn't know how you did that, or how did you address that, or what's that error? I've seen that error before. How do you address it? So on Fridays are going to be our workshop sessions, and they're going to be about an hour and 20 minutes. And for most of you, these are going to be in person. For some of you where there's issues with you being able to attend your courses in person, particularly in the first few weeks, we are going to make accommodations to make sure that you can still do these sessions remotely via Zoom. And if you have any issues that you want to reach out to us, that you're worried about doing these workshops, please let us know. We're really going to try and make sure that we can accommodate everyone's circumstances in this instance. But hopefully you'll be able to attend in person, and we'll want you to bring your laptop. And we've provided some resources if you want to check if your laptop is going to be a decent enough spec, or if you think that you need to request one or loan one for these sessions. Please follow the links on the website or in this slide deck here, and we'll make sure to accommodate. Now, the tools that we're going to be using is actually a cloud resource, so it doesn't necessarily rely on any local computing environment that you have. We're going to be using this tool, if we're in computer labs or not in computer labs, we're going to be using the same platform, as it's a modern platform that makes sure that you have all the resources that you need to have a modern data science working environment. And this is RStudio Cloud that you hopefully have already signed up for. If you haven't already, please go through the first time setup instructions so you're nice and ready for the workshop. And the reason we're using this is it just means that everyone's working environment is pretty much the same regardless of your laptop that you bring. But also when you get to the projects and you get to some of your homeworks and stuff, you're familiar with how to access these resources on your own computing environment. So we're going to be working in teams, and for these workshops and labs, we're going to expect you to hand in by the next week what you'd worked on that week. And then we'll provide you the answer keys as well. And that hand-in will be marked and contribute to your final grade a little bit. We want you to work in teams because as you learn more about data science, you'll realize that it really does rely on working collaboratively. It's not just a discipline where you work by yourself. Typically, especially if you're working with real-life data, you're working with the team that collected the data, you're doing the data processing and the modeling, and then maybe you want to talk to the people who you're outputting your information to kind of contextualize this and then go around that data cycle that we talked about in one of the earlier videos. So we really want to establish how you work in teams using the tools that we would be using any other year for collaboratively working together. We think it's a really important point. So hopefully you're looking forward to not only working on stuff by yourself, but also in a teamwork environment. Now, we recommend that you set up weekly team meetings between the Friday and the Tuesday, so maybe over the weekend, maybe on the Monday, just to finish those ones off before you get the answers after the deadline. The lowest score is going to be dropped. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on, but essentially if there's a particular week where you and your team are struggling for any particular reason and you don't hand something in, then we will remove that 1 mark from your final grade. If that happens again, then we'll have to consider that mark, but you essentially get one free pass for each type of assessed work that you hand in. So as well as the team working labs, we also have individual work for you to hand in, and the homework assignments are one of those. And what we're looking for there is for you to submit every other week a homework piece that shows off how you're doing with your art skills. And this means that you work on it by yourself. Now, towards the end of this video, I'll talk a little bit more about university policies and about, making sure that you've got academic integrity and all that sort of stuff. But really, it's just good to know that the lab works, you're working in a team, and the projects, you'll be working in a team, which we'll discuss in a minute. And for this and the quizzes, which I'll also discuss, they're to be worked on by yourself. And again, we're going to be dropping the lowest score. So if there's a particular week or a particular homework that you're particularly struggling on, or you're unable to hand in, then we'll be able to drop that lowest score from your final score for the course. Now, we really recommend that you do the optional R tutorials. They'll be listed on the website, and these are going to introduce you to the data sets you'll be using for these homeworks, but also go over some of the topics that those homeworks are going to focus on. The quizzes are also to be completed individually, and they're mostly multiple choice questions. Some have a bit of coding, some are about some of the concepts that we've been learning throughout the week, and they're there to just kind of solidify what you've been learning about on the topics that week, and they count towards your final grade as well. And the tip for these is just don't leave them to the last minute. This is the same for all of them. The more time you have to spend on them, generally the better you're going to be able to be and produce better work. But also, this stuff is known to fail right before the deadline. If everyone's trying to submit at once, or maybe your internet goes down, or maybe, I don't know, lightning strikes or something, who knows? But it's always just bad luck around deadlines. So I would get your work handed in earlier with a bit of leeway if something bad happens, just to make sure you make those deadlines. For the project, we're not going to release the information too early, give you a bit of chance to kind of get a footing with the course and that stuff. We'll release it later on when we start working on the projects. Again, this is going to be team-based. You're going to be working in the team that you've been working on the labs. Hopefully you've got a good flow with your team now. You kind of helped each other out enough now, and you kind of know each other's strengths and weaknesses a little bit. And so at this point, we're going to be looking for you to propose a project on any data set that you're interested in. Now we're going to give you some guidance and say, hey, maybe those data sets are a bit easier than these data sets, but really it's up to you and your team to decide what interests you and how you want to use the skills that you've learned on this course to demonstrate something really interesting to us. So interesting visualization, a bit of modeling, that sort of thing. So this is what we want you to propose to us. We'll then give you feedback on what we think is going to be really good about your project, what we think might be a bit tricky, or that maybe you want to reconsider. You can then optionally make those amendments to the proposal and submit them back and get a short feedback from us again. We're then looking for a 1-page write-up and a 5-minute presentation at the end where you can show the rest of your workshop group, so everyone else who's in your workshop slot and place, what you've been working on, what was interesting. It should be pretty fun. And again, there's accommodations for if you're unable to actually physically attend, but we're mostly going to be doing this in person. Again, please stick to optional deadlines, and this is more for you. We're going to be checking up while we're going and just saying, hey, at this point you should be at this stage, or at this point you should be at that stage. That's really to make sure that you're able to produce the best project you possibly can and not leave it till the very last minute, because again, that'll be really stressful and you won't enjoy doing the project as much if you're rushing it right towards the end. So that's our tip for this one. Here we have the course deadlines. So the deadlines for all the parts of this course. Some of the dates may move around if there's a particular issue that means that we need to change anything that happens in the outside world, anything that changes. We've lived through a year of a lot of changes, so who knows? We're going to try to be flexible, but the main thing is we're not going to all of a sudden say, hey, that work that you were planning on submit on Sunday now has to be on Friday. It's always going to be pushed back if it has to be. But this is how we anticipate the course to go. We anticipate, as I said before, that labs are to be handed in on Tuesdays. We have the homeworks every other week. We have the weekly quizzes on Sundays, and you can see these other things that maybe you're not so sure about. So these course ones are course feedback, and these are feedback for us to make sure that there's nothing that's confusing, that you're able to get going with the course, and if there's any issues, you can identify with them for us. Of course, you can tell us on Piazza or email or any other way when we've got in-person stuff if there's any issues, but this is another chance for us to just kind of capture and make sure that there are no issues that anyone's experiencing that we weren't aware of. We also have these peer feedback, and this is your chance to tell us how your team is working, if there's any issues that you think we can help with. If there's a particular member of the team who's not contributing, this is a chance for you to tell us, and then we can grade that team bit of work accordingly if there's any issues. So that's what they're for as well. And that's for both the labs and the projects. So for this course, the weights of the graded components are on the screen now. So homework and the quizzes, which you're going to work on individually, are going to be 40 and 20 respectively. And the lab and the project are worth 10 and 30% respectively. And the moderation and scaling will follow the university policies, which means that at the end of the course, after we've got all the grades, this goes through a course board, which is essentially a meeting where the staff sit together and we look through the grades together and we move grade boundaries and stuff like that to make sure that it's fair. If people did particularly well or particularly poorly in a particular year, just trying to make sure that the grading is as fair as possible. If you're interested in how we assess as the School of Maths stuff, there's a link on the slides and on the website as well for you to look at. So let's now go over some course policies of our expectations and some of the rules around this year. Now for this year, we've obviously had a very different year last year, but this year there's still some things that we need to do a bit differently. One of those is abiding by Scottish legal requirements around distancing and masks. So they're a little bit different to England in that in Scotland at the moment, at the time of recording, this was last updated on the 3rd of September. We do still require mask wearing, and this is both the university and Scotland as a whole. And so because we're going to be in indoor spaces with groups of people, we do need that you wear a mask unless you are exempt. And there are actually a number of exemptions here. If you follow the link that I've provided here and on the website, you can have a read of what the exemptions are. Obviously, they cover certain conditions and disabilities that may not be obvious. So please be respectful of people who aren't wearing masks. There are measures in place such as 1 meter distancing, and that's meant that we have room sizes that are smaller than the capacity of the room would normally, and there's a lot more ventilation requirements. Now that 1 meter distancing rule at the moment is not a legal rule, but it is something that the university would like us to observe. Now, if you talk to your group and your whole team is happy, then you are allowed to move closer together. But please respect people's decisions if they decide that they do want to keep distance. And, just remember that there are people at higher risk of severe illness, and this could be a whole host of reasons. Maybe they're living with people who are at high risk. So please have that conversation and assume that a 1 meter distancing is the default, and that any changes according to that are based on permission from other people. Where we're doing stuff digitally, such as the digital student hours, or the live coding session, or if you're attending the workshops digitally, there's a few expectations that we have about your use of Zoom. The first one is that if you're in a large session, so a large session with quite a number of students, please mute your microphone. It will be muted by default, but if you've got lots and lots of people in the same room together and people's microphones are on and all that background noise, it can become really, really hard to hear who is speaking. So please always check when entering a Zoom session that your microphone is muted. If you have any issues or want to comment, please raise your hand in these large sessions. There's a raise hand feature, or just type in the chat. We'll be checking the chat. In the small teams, so if in workshops, in your breakout rooms, our expectation is that you have your camera switched on and that you are communicating mostly via voice. And the reason for that is because you will be working in teams, and it's very, very difficult to work in a team when the cameras are off and the microphones are muted. because there's a lot of cues that we get visually from each other, especially when we're talking to each other. It's very frustrating when you're talking to someone and you can't see them, to see that they're communicating, if they're nodding along to show that they're following, and or if they're looking a bit confused. It can really help you when you're explaining something to a teammate, and it's useful for us as well when we're explaining things to you, to be able to see if, that you're able to, if you've got any problems, then maybe we need to re-explain it in a different way. You don't pick that up via text. And also text chat is very slow, and we have a number of students to talk to. And so that sort of method of communication in a live setting can be really disruptive to the flow of a conversation, and can be quite frustrating for both people, for both the people with mics and the both with people without. Now, obviously, you may have technical difficulties, and that might mean that for 1 or 2 weeks you can't have a camera or a microphone or whatever. But please, as the default, please try keep your cameras and mics on, unless there's any particular reason that you feel that you're exempt from this, or that you're having technical issues and this is a temporary situation. And of course, be ready to share your screen as well. So make sure that you're all taking turns to share your work environment, rather than just relying on one individual to do most of the work. So for this course, our collaboration policy is that unless it's clearly assigned as a teamwork, so this is the labs and this is the projects, you're meant to be doing it individually, because it's assessed work a lot of the time, and so you shouldn't be working with other people to get the answers, because that would count as plagiarism. So individual assignments are done individually. You can't directly share or discuss your answers or code with other people other than us as the teaching team, so myself, Alex, and the tutors. You are welcome to discuss the problems in general with people, of course, but by posting, "This is how I answered question 1," or "Can anyone help me with why my code isn't running?" for the homeworks, for example, would be something that wouldn't be appropriate to share with other individuals. But other problems are, and if you're having any problems with knowing what you can and what you can't share, the best thing to do is, if it's something very, very specific to a piece of assessed work, on the Piazza forum that we're going to be using primarily for a lot of our communication throughout the course, just make sure that it's only visible by the instructors. There's an easy button that you can press. We'll go through this in the next video, and that way you can make sure that it only gets to us and not everyone can see it. If it's a general problem or general issue that you're having, that's completely fine. Really, we're just trying to make sure that you're not copying other people's answers, and that this really is a reflective piece of work of what your abilities currently are. So that's just fair for everyone. Of course, we're aware that there's tons of code out there online, and you might find quite a lot of that code very useful when you're doing the assessments. And that's completely fine. One of the things that you'll learn throughout this course is not only how to read an error or a warning, but also how to look on the internet to help you find how to solve that issue. And it may well be, to solve it, there's a piece of code that you can copy from a Stack Overflow forum or something like that. And that's perfectly fine. In fact, that happens all the time. But for this course, to make sure it's not counted as plagiarism, you do need to tell us where you got that from. So say you copy a bit of code, or you copy it and just change a line or two, then give us in the comments above the code or in the markdown section above it. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it yet. You will, I promise. You just tell us where you got it from, and then it won't be counted as plagiarism. However, if you're copying code, especially from other students on the course, this will be counted as plagiarism. If you don't tell us where you're getting it from, you shouldn't be copying code from other students anyway, but from online. And there's can be quite serious consequences if you're caught plagiarizing work, if you're caught cheating. Now, this isn't just for the course, this is across the university. And if there is issues with plagiarism, this isn't something that's necessarily dealt by me. This is dealt at the university level and going to have some serious consequences. So the best thing to do is to always say, hey, here's where I got my code from, and then you'll be fine. And if you're not copying from other students, you genuinely have nothing to worry about on this course. So I don't want you to worry. I just want to make sure that you're not copying other people's work. If you're not able to submit some work at a certain deadline and you do want to submit a piece of work for part of the assessment, then the first thing to do and the best thing to do is just to reach out to me or Alex and just say, hey, I'm not going to be able to make this deadline, but I still want to submit my work. I'm planning on submitting it on Tuesday or Wednesday or whenever you're able to. And we'll try to help you to make sure that you're able to still submit that work. Now, these late work policies for this course follows the university policies. You're probably sick of hearing me say the university policies, but we have to abide by those. If you want an extension, you have to go through the university system. It's not something me and Alex can grant, but we can help you get one if you need one. But that final decision of whether you get an extension or not is based from a group that's kind of a central university group rather than us as the teachers ourselves. There is some work that we can't accept extensions and late work for. These are the quizzes and the labs, but we can accept late work for the homework and the projects. There is a penalty unless you've got a granted exception. So that's 4 days past the deadline with a 5% penalty for the homework assignments, and the projects will accept them 7 days after the deadline. But again, there's that 5% penalty for each day. We can't accept late work for the presentations as well. That's because we want you to give the presentations at a certain time. If you can't make that time, then we have provisions that you can submit the presentation in another way, but we can't accept that work late as well. So if you're ever confused about when we can and can't accept late work, have a look on the website or just give me and Alex a shout and we'll explain it for you. If you feel that your work hasn't been graded properly and maybe a mistake has been made, then you're able to request a regrade, and that can be through emailing myself or Alex. And you know, we're human beings. When we're marking work, sometimes we make mistakes, either Alex, I, or the tutors. We maybe tallied something wrong, or you may have got the correct answer, but we accidentally marked it as wrong. Then we're more than happy, if you point this out to us, to go in and to change that. Same with marks. Please keep an eye on the marks and make sure that the marks are matching with what you expected, just for any errors that happen. Now, obviously, I'm not planning to make any errors, but maybe I will, maybe someone else will. We'll all try our best, but these things happen. So please just, make sure to let us know if there's any issues. The one thing that we won't do for regrade is if you've been marked down for a particular thing and you think we've been overly harsh, say you're like, that's not like losing 5 marks worth. Because we have to apply these penalties to everyone equally, we're not going to change how many marks we deduct for certain errors, just because that's been applied to everyone. So in a way, it's not fair to change this for particular individuals. So we won't change it if you just feel like the mark scheme we've used is a bit unfair. There also won't be any grade changes after the final project presentations, and this is more of a practical issue that at a certain point we need to submit the grades for the course for to be finalized by the school, and at a certain point that kind of administrative procedure, we just need to kind of get those grades finalized for the course. And so please kind of keep track throughout the course of what your grades are looking like. If there's any errors, we're more than happy to change them. But after a certain point, it becomes really difficult because at that point, it's kind of out of our hands. So please let us know as early as possible if you have any problems with the grades that you received, and we'll make sure that we can get that changed for you. Now, there's hopefully a number of ways that you find that you can get help on this course, and it's something that we really want to provide for you. We've got Piazza, which is like a forum for you to post questions about course content, logistics, discuss things on the course with other students, with the staff. That's the best go-to place for nearly every question that you have. You can make sure that only staff can see your question. You can make sure that other students can see it. That's the best default, because if for whatever reason me and Alex aren't available to answer a question quickly, you've got other students, and we really encourage you to help out and to answer questions for other students. Some questions we might not go and address straight away because we might feel that that's a really good question that we'd be interested to see how other students talk about it and create a discussion. Obviously, some other questions you'll probably only can really be answered by us, especially about logistics, and we'll try answer them as quickly as we possibly can. Chances are, if you've got a question, other students will have a question, and some other students might even know the answer. So it's a great way of getting quick answers about the course. We also have our student hours, so we're going to be doing 2 hours a week, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday, and so that's a great time to just get answers straight away and maybe have more of a discussion. The code along sessions might be a good time for you to ask course content questions as well, because that's a live session too. There's Maths Base, where there's tutors available for you to get help with some of the work on this course and other courses as well. You could do that drop in support. There'll be more details on how that's running this year on the website. You can also email me and Alex as well. This is particularly for personal matters, such as things you wouldn't post on a forum, like illnesses, concessions, any other issues that you're experiencing that you want to discuss with me and Alex. Email's the best way of approaching that as well. You know, we want you to ask questions. You know, we want you to be able to come to us and say, hey, I don't understand this, or can you explain this more to me? More than happy to answer that. If you email us those questions and we feel like a better place would be on the forum, we'll probably just ask you to move it there, which is no issue at all, because chances are if you've got a question, other people will be interested too in the answer. But otherwise, yeah, email us for more personal issues and we'll make sure to address them there as well. Of course, we want to make sure that the content and the way that we deliver this course, you know, is very respectful of all sorts of axes of diversity. One of the things that we're doing is we ask for your preferred names and pronouns. It might be that your official student records have one particular name or pronouns, but you would like to be addressed by other names or pronouns. Always make sure to correct me if there's any issues, and that should be a general way of dealing with all of these issues with staff and students alike, is just to have an open and honest conversation if something was said that made you feel uncomfortable or we didn't address things correctly. We're all learning, everyone, myself, the other staff, other students, everyone's learning about how to approach these things respectfully and in the right way. So please let us know if there's ways that, you know, you feel uncomfortable and you would like things to change. I think we also need to acknowledge that we've just had quite a hard year in 2020. 2021 as well has been similar, although I'm hoping that things are starting to look different. I'm sure you are, and things are different to how they were even just a few months ago now. But there's still probably changes. There's still probably affected our lives in some ways. And so the best way for this to happen in this course is just for us to communicate with each other and tell each other about what difficulties we're having and how that's affecting the course. You never owe me or anyone on the course information about your health or your mental health, but if you do want to talk about it, especially as it relates to your ability to learn things from this course, then know that, you know, me, Alex, and the rest of the teaching team are more than happy to discuss this with you and to try give advice. But we're not experts on this stuff, so it might be that we just direct you towards someone who's an expert at giving better advice in that area than we are able to. And, you know, we want you to learn a lot from this class, but the main thing that we want is for you to stay healthy, balanced, and grounded. That's the most important thing, that you come out of this healthy and learning something that you wanted to learn about. So, yeah, hopefully this information was useful, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video.